Run it back, Philly. No frauds, no fanboys, no intros.
The beginning of this season, I start to see it's not just Doc Rivers, it's the whole like roster. Really, we were supposed to have depth. Then at the beginning of the season, we look like we're not deep at all. The bench was worse than it was last year. Then the bench comes around because they start to get. This is a good question, actually, that I'm going to ask you. Then the bench comes around because they start to get playing time because everybody gets hurt. And then everybody's like, look, we are a deep team. We do have bench players. So then I'm like, is it the roster? Or is it the fact that Doc Rivers, with all the starters in a healthy squad, couldn't figure out how much to play certain guys? Which is also why I'm blaming him for everybody being injured.
I mean, it's a lot. Like, I think, first of all, a lot of Sixers fans are going crazy about us winning without Embiid, Harden, and Maxey. But, like, look at the strength of schedule. We've played the literal dog shit of the NBA. Tobias Harris didn't really play that great. He had quarters at a time where he looked good, but, like, even the night that he had 25 and whatever, and he was still the third best player on the court. DeAnthony Melton and Shake Milton especially, Shake, I should say, especially, has been, like, very, very good, but it's not sustainable against good teams. And it's also just like, I love these guys. Like, I like the bench. Shake's probably my favorite player. He has been for a few years, but he's just not athletic enough to be like a sustainable, really good dude off the bench. And he's, struggled with, his health. If he can be able to shoot the way he's been shooting, I think he's going to solidify himself as a real guy. But, like, the problem is once all of these dudes come back, it's going to just revert back to the same shitty brand of basketball we've been playing with Embiid on the court that Doc Rivers loves to play, and all of the fun ball movement, the fun grittiness that we've, fallen in love with over the past week and a half is just, it's not going to be existing anymore. So it's like, it's just a very short window of happiness for a team that it's not going to sustain that type of basketball. And even, like, look, I get everyone hates PJ Tucker. Like, I really get it, but I don't think he's the worst thing to ever happen to Philly. Like, I think he brings a lot of positives. He's been guarding the best player on the other team, like, every single night. And I think that takes a lot out of him. Like, do I think his deal's fantastic? No, I think it's a shitty deal, but, like, I don't think he's the big issue. Like, I still think the way Tobias Harris fits in with Embiid is atrocious. Like, and I hate the way the stars fit with each other, and the fact that Harden can't stay healthy right now. And, like, there's so much wrong with this team that, like, I don't even really know what the number one issue, if there was one to fix, would be.
So firing Doc Rivers does not fix the issues, is what you're saying. Because I think I've seen, like, just last year when I saw Dan Burke for 4 games, again, he got an 18-point game and an 11-point game back-to-back out of Isaiah Joe. He got production out of Charles Bassey. He got production out of deep bench guys that, for whatever reason, Glenn Rivers would never even give a shot to, and then those guys get released and they start producing off the bench for other teams, and we get to the position where we're like, hey, we don't have a backup center. Oh, we actually released one for no reason. We actually released Isaiah Joe. These guys have value. We could have traded them, if anything. So I start to see, like, I haven't really gotten to see these players with a different person in charge, and I don't think I'm going to get to see that. The only time I got to see that was when Doc had COVID for a week. And so, I don't know if a different coach could get more. I think a different coach could definitely get more out of a lot of guys and a lot of different lineup combinations. Maybe everything would look totally different.
1,000%. But I think Doc's biggest issue is teams bring him in when they expect to win championships. So Doc is like, oh, the way that I do that is by not playing anybody who's under the age of 46 years old or good at basketball. So, like, and solidified. So, like, he didn't play Paul Reed until, we forced his hand to. He never played Isaiah Joe, who is good for him finding time and finding, success in Oklahoma City. And he never played Charles Bassey, who was a guy who I think everybody came out of college and was like, yo, this dude's going to be something that we need. And we struggle having a backup 5. And for some reason, Doc refused to play it. But, like, I just think Doc thinks that's who he is. And so in that sense, the Sixers would be much better off by firing Doc Rivers. Like, I hate Doc Rivers more than anything. And I think it's always a lot easier to blame him. And I would not give him credit for the games that we've won recently. Like, he's done nothing about it. Like, his rotations aren't bad because he only has 9 guys available. Like, what do we expect the dude to do? Like, but my thing with Doc Rivers is the fact that like Harden was getting like 38 minutes a night with Embiid getting 37 and Maxey getting like 37 and a half. Like, no wonder these dudes go down and get hurt when all along we have these guys on the bench that can play basketball, and he just never seemed to like make any single adjustment. So like, yeah, I partially blame a lot of the injuries on Doc Rivers's like fact that he's just running these dudes into the ground. But I also just blame the fact that Doc Rivers never gave a chance to any of these kids who are finally, starting to play basketball.
Right.
Like, we've had depth. We have depth. It's just, it's not great. Like, our team isn't good. Like, I think Doc Rivers, okay. So what I'm saying is, even if we put in like an elite NBA head coach, I still do not think the Sixers are good enough to win an NBA championship.
No, not right now. I think it also has to do with their like what he preaches and what they practice, like figuratively, but actually practice. I brought it up yesterday or the day before in the George Niang interview on the JJ Redick podcast. He made a joke about the Sixers and Doc Rivers practice. He made a joke. He was like, well, it's all good now. We got Doc Rivers practice, and he was like, if you want to call it that. And JJ laughed, and he was like, isn't it great having Doc? And he was like, yeah, it's all rainbows over here. And I'm like, you guys are laughing about the fact that Doc Rivers doesn't make people practice. And then somebody was like, well, I don't really think any NBA players like practice that blah 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 or whatever. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure they were saying that because they were comparing it to being on other teams where you have to practice harder. And then you come out. I mean, this makes perfect sense. And then you come out and you're the worst transition defense team in the league. You're the worst rebounding team in the league. All of these things are things that would happen if you don't have hard practices. Like, it's insane. And I mean, Embiid comes in looking out of shape. They make up an excuse that nobody talked about in the middle of the summer or whenever it happened. I still don't believe that he had plantar fasciitis. So yeah, it's not just his rotations. It's like a culture thing. Like I'm over it, man. And I think the whole city's over it. Everyone that I talk to is over it. Everyone that I talk to. I talk to random people every day. I still bartend 3 days a week. And I talk to random people every day. People that aren't even basketball heads. And usually the first thing that they say is, yeah, man, they got to get rid of Doc, man. It's like so generally known right now. And it was very close to happening. I was legitimately rooting against my own basketball team because I said, look, if we can just get smacked by 45 by the Brooklyn Nets in our own arena and the whole arena boos and it'll get really bad. And yeah, now it's been delaying it, but I think there's a lot of things wrong with what Doc Rivers does. And the people being happy right now with the wins and expecting this to continue or expecting the guys to come back and Doc to do things differently. He's 62 years old. He's done things literally this way his entire coaching career. If people actually looked at his coaching career everywhere he's been, he's done things this way. There's no reason whatsoever to think that he's randomly going to take a step back and say, oh, okay, I should play the starters maybe low 30 minutes and try to experiment and give the bench guys some time and figure out some lineups during the season. And then when the playoffs come around, I'll know what to do. We witnessed it last year. He didn't do that the whole regular season. Playoffs came around. He had to panic play Paul Reed because everyone was yelling at him, who he didn't play the whole season. It was insane, and we're going to see more insanity very soon. Monday night, to be exact.
Run it back, Philly. No frauds, no fanboys, no intros.